April 25th, 2005. The morning rush in Amagasaki, Japan was alive with its usual rhythm. Commuters pouring into stations, trains sliding in and out with clockwork precision. Among them was train 5418M, a 7-car commuter service on the Fukuchiyama line, leaving Takarazuka station at 9:03 a.m. It was late. Not by much, just 15 seconds. But in Japan's world-renowned rail system, where seconds matter, even this was already a blemish. The man at the controls was 23-year-old Ryujiro Takami, a young driver with only a year of experience on the line. Earlier that morning, he had committed a small but costly mistake, passing a red signal at low speed, forcing the train's automatic brakes to slam on and bring everything to a halt. That error had pushed him behind schedule, and Takami now carried the weight of that failure as he pressed forward. Every decision he made from here on would be shaped by the company culture he worked under, a culture that demanded perfection and punished mistakes with humiliation. As the train sped on, the delay grew worse. Ikeda station was overcrowded, and the rush of passengers took longer than expected to board. By the time the doors closed, Takami was nearly a full minute late. For most of the world's railway systems, a 60-second delay is meaningless. But in JR West, this was unacceptable. Every second mattered. Takami, rattled and desperate, pushed the train harder. He was chasing time, trying to claw back those lost seconds, even as alarms in his cab warned him of excessive speed. The line between discipline and disaster was already beginning to blur, and Takami was about to cross it. Japan's rail system is famous worldwide for its precision. A train being late by even a minute is rare, and delays are usually measured in seconds. To outsiders, this punctuality might seem almost obsessive, but in Japan it was considered a matter of national pride. The West Japan Rail Company, or JR West, had inherited this culture after the breakup of Japan's state-owned rail system. Their trains were expected to arrive on the dot, no excuses. On busy commuter lines like the Fukuchiyama line, even the smallest slip could ripple across the schedule, affecting thousands of passengers. This strict environment bred immense pressure on drivers. At JR West, being late by more than 30 seconds wasn't just a mark against you, it could mean punishment. Drivers who overshot platforms or caused delays risked being pulled off their trains and sent to what the company called day shift education. On paper, this sounded like retraining. In reality, it was closer to humiliation. Employees would be forced to spend days or even weeks cutting grass, pulling weeds, cleaning toilets, or copying company policies by hand. They might face verbal abuse from supervisors, be docked pay, and worst of all, never know when they'd be allowed back on duty. For young drivers like 23-year-old Ryujiro Takami, the fear of being disciplined was ever present. He had already been through the process once before. To be sent back again would not only be embarrassing, but also damaging to his career. This fear loomed large over every decision he made that morning. What might have been a simple mistake in any other country, a late departure, a minor overshoot, was, in JR West's world, a potential career disaster. And Takami knew it. By the time train 5418M reached Itami Station, driver Takami was already rattled. He had overshot the platform by the length of 3 carriages, a blunder that had to be reported. Embarrassed and panicked, he called the conductor at the rear of the train, suggesting that they downplay the mistake and say it was only 1 carriage. The conductor refused, bluntly telling him he was driving too fast. For Takami, the humiliation of another reprimand loomed large. Determined to claw back lost time, he pushed the train harder than ever. As the train raced toward Amagasaki, it hit 116 kilometers per hour, dangerously high for the tight curve just before the station. Takami must have realized the danger because he briefly applied the service brake. But he didn't dare pull the emergency brake. Doing so would require a formal explanation to his superiors, an admission that he had been speeding, and likely another round of day shift education. In the split second when decisive action might have saved lives, fear of punishment held him back. At 9:18 a.m, the train entered the curve. The front 2 cars slammed off the tracks and ploughed directly into a nearby apartment building. The force crushed the lead cars beyond recognition, killing everyone inside, including Takami. The remaining 5 cars twisted and piled into each other, leaving hundreds of passengers trapped, injured, and screaming for help. What should have been a routine Monday morning commute had, in seconds, turned into Japan's deadliest rail disaster in decades, all because of a 90-second delay. The derailment shook the city of Amagasaki like an earthquake. Locals who lived near the tracks heard a deafening crash, followed by a grinding roar as steel tore through concrete. Within moments, people were rushing toward the apartment building, horrified by what they saw. Train cars mangled like tin foil, passengers pinned inside, and smoke rising from the wreck. Inside the building's parking garage, the train had demolished several cars, spilling gasoline everywhere. Rescuers couldn't use tools that sparked, like saws or torches, for fear of igniting an explosion. That meant the work of freeing victims was painstakingly slow. Residents began pulling the less severely injured out through broken windows and doors, while the most critical cases were carried on stretchers to waiting ambulances. When ambulances ran out, taxis, police cars, and even flatbed trucks were commandeered to ferry survivors to hospitals. The Japanese Self-Defense Force joined the effort, digging through wreckage and helping stabilize the collapsed parts of the building. Emergency workers could hear cries for help from inside the crushed lead cars, but reaching them was almost impossible. Hours of desperate work followed as rescuers fought both the clock and the unstable wreckage. Of the roughly 700 people aboard, 107 would not survive, including everyone in the first 2 cars. Another 562 were injured, many left with life-changing disabilities. The survivors would later describe scenes of terror, people trapped in darkness, packed so tightly they couldn't move, calling out the names of loved ones or simply begging to be saved. By evening, the full scale of the disaster was becoming clear. It wasn't just a train crash, it was a national tragedy, one that left Japan questioning how a network so famous for its safety and punctuality could produce devastation on this scale. As the smoke cleared and the rescue ended, attention turned to the question everyone was asking: how could this have happened? The train had been travelling far too fast, 116 kilometers per hour, on a curve with a posted limit of just 70. All evidence pointed to driver error, but why would a 23-year-old, fit and healthy, with no medical conditions, push his train so recklessly? Investigators soon discovered the answer wasn't simply about speed, it was about fear. Employees who made mistakes were pulled from duty and subjected to humiliating menial tasks, weeding gardens, cleaning toilets, or copying company manuals by hand for hours. Some were verbally abused, some even had their pay docked. Nobody knew how long the punishment would last, weeks, sometimes months, and it hung over employees like a threat to their career. Takami had already been disciplined once before. Facing the prospect of being sent back for more education, he likely panicked. Investigators concluded that he had been trying desperately to claw back the 90-second delay, running the train at near maximum speed and ultimately losing control on the curve. In his final seconds, he applied the service brake but not the emergency brake. Why? Because pulling the emergency lever would have required him to justify it to superiors, exposing the fact that he had been speeding. His fear of the company's punishment culture, combined with his inexperience, likely sealed his fate, and tragically, the fate of 106 others.